I thought I would want to talk to you about one very big piece of legislation that's coming up, and that legislation is the low sulfur fuel regulations that are coming into force on the 1st of January 2020. It's the buzzword 2020 regulations. It is going to be a very big piece of legislation that we've had to deal with, far-reaching consequences. We started working on this as far back as 2008, and MEPC has all along tried to deal with all matters of reduction of air pollution from ships. That discussion comes out of the broader climate change discussion. You would recall that the climate change discussion takes place at the United Nations Convention on Climate Change, the UNFCCC. And two sectors in terms of UNFCCC are left out of the in-country discussion as to what do with sectors within the country, energy, manufacturing, agriculture, do with their emissions, because that becomes a country response. However, two sectors cannot be tied to any one country, and those sectors are aviation as well as maritime. Now, there's been a long discussion where over the past looked at market-based measures. We've looked at in the context of your greenhouse gas emission reduction. We've looked at other aspects, whether it is your ship design, where there's work that we did to say that if you designed your ships to use less energy, then you might contribute to the reduction of these greenhouse gases for the same tonnage transmitted. We looked at issues of ship operation. So we came out with energy efficient design indexes in respect of new ships being built. We came up with energy operation ship index in the event of ships that exist, whether you must use underwater paint that's less resistant to water, slow steaming, a whole lot of other things. We're doing this knowing that the maritime sector, maritime shipping, is the most efficient mode of shipping, actually contributing only 3% to global emissions currently. But because the world is moving towards this global economy, this integrated logistics approach, where no one country has all the resources that it requires to build to make one product that it must consume, so that wherever the products, all the input materials come from, they get shipped to one destination, get assembled, get shipped to all the consumption destinations. So shipping then is said to continue to grow, and that is why shipping needs to make certain adjustments on its emissions today. And that is why then once you've dealt with issues of ship design that is efficient, ship operations, you come with the fuel itself that you burn, because the fuel is the source of the emissions themselves. Now, that is the context of these regulations, and sulfur is the one targeted element that needs to be done away with coming out of the fuel. So we had a meeting at the Marine Environmental Protection Committee, MEPC, this past week, and we decided on a few things of the implementation of that regulation. Now, we already know that that was the last MEPC before the actual implementation date. There's a lot of questions that we are still asking, and South Africa is no different in terms of the issues that we need to quite grapple with. We've got the convention. South Africa is a state party now to the actual MAPOL convention and its annexure, which is Annexure 6, that deals with air emissions. What we are yet to do is to pass regulations to give effect to us having signed up to that convention. That needs to happen still. We've issued 2 marine notices as to how are we going to deal with the implementation. There's a requirement that all ships from that day use the complying fuel, which means fuel with a sulfur content of less than 0.5 parts per million. And that sulfur content, that fuel has to then be sourced. We've spoken to the energy people, the refineries and them, and it is not, we do not have an official view as to whether we shall have this fuel or not, at least from an association point of view. We've spoken to the individual oil companies. Our sense is that we are going to generally, by and large, be able to offer, from a country perspective, these complying fuels, which means we clear. If we cannot do it in port for whatever reason, you would know that we've got an offshore bunkering station outside Port Elizabeth where all the fuel is imported into that area. We are guaranteed that we will be able to supply fuel from that point. But that's not the end of our of the issues that we need to deal with. What happens when a ship coming into a South African port has non-complying fuel? What do we do with it? We need to discuss those issues. What happens? How do you even test for it? There's a view in terms of the regulations that you need testing facilities. Do we have those laboratories to be able to test this fuel? The use of, in the event there is no complying fuel, do we allow the use of the non-compliant fuel if the ship is fitted with sulfur reducing technologies? It's called scrubbers. What they do, they take your exhaust gas, spray some seawater and then suppress the sulfur. Problem is now you've got seawater that's got sulfur. What do you do with that water? Now we've taken various views. We haven't done our own in-depth study to say how big is that problem of that water. Do you dump it? How do you process it? So when we came back then, it became proper that we go out to industry to say we think we're ready if we get the regulations in place. However, there are a whole lot of other answers that we think we need to provide. But we took a very different approach, that perhaps we need to have all these questions, those that we have answers to and those that we might not have answers to. Get into one room, call everybody that's concerned, let's discuss this. I envisage that broad session to take place somewhere around the 2nd week of July, and I envisage that we would have your energy sector there, both the regulator, which is the Department of Energy, as well as the oil companies, both the refiners and the bunker traders, And I envisage that we would have the ship owners there. They are the affected parties, the port authorities. All this takes place within the port. It would be led by ourselves because we are the implementing agent of the Department of Transport, which is the state party. So, and it is a Samsa surveyor ultimately that must step on board that ship. So we will guide that discussion. I am not suggesting once that we've thought about every eventuality and that we have an answer to every eventuality. I suspect that we are all going to have to grapple with some of these nuances. But I am hoping that if we get into one room, at least we'll have a clearer set of questions, and then we can all think about the answers. We are going to issue another marine notice and another invitation to that session once we've done our work internally, and we're going to invite a set of questions that you may have, such that we may begin a conversation and structure our discussion over the day that we shall be meeting. As I'm saying, I do know that while we can't quite postpone the 1st of January 2020, it will come. We know it will come. It is my view that we're not going to have a crisis on that day. I hope not. There are serious questions that we need answers to, particularly the one that says, what do I do if there's a ship full of oil, of bunker fuels that are not compliant? That's a broader IMO problem that we have, and there are few options as to how do you deal with that. We will have the same to grapple with. We are part of a broader IMO working group on these matters. So as we get these questions, we pass them on, test what other countries are doing. We've already said we'll allow the use of scrubbers on our coastline. We need to define exactly what we mean by our coastline. Are we going to allow those within the port? And I think there's a marine notice to that effect. We will confirm some of those positions that we've taken. So once more, to you, our stakeholders, thank you very much for the continued partnership. These are no longer simple matters that we're having to deal with. It's matters that must be dealt with, and it is my hope that together we can sit around, find these solutions, and in time we shall be coming out to you much quicker than we've done this time around. I do not think that we will be found wanting. I certainly hope not. So I'm hoping to see those of you that I'm going to that can make themselves available on the 2nd week of July or thereabout, and I'm hoping to continue to converse with you. And thanks to some of you that do respond to these notes that we put out there. It's a very good engagement. We take every advice. We try and revert to you, or at least acknowledge what you're telling us. Thank you so much.